So, welcome, greetings to this second talk of my little jaunt in the UK, coinciding with the political developments of Brexit, and I'm giving a talk here called The Karma of Brexit. I'm talking about the spiritual and metaphysical dimensions of politics, so it's a broad picture. And it coincides with the fact that the country is kind of in crisis about what to do about Brexit. And I will be speaking from a metaphysical analysis of the situation. I'm going to start by just introducing myself a little bit so that people know where I'm coming from, and then I'll go into the talk proper. And I'm going to be interspersing the sections of this talk with my little sounding bell, which is a tradition that actually here, it's quite at home here in the Theosophical Society, where I've spoken here before. It's an international society devoted to wisdom and esoteric thinking, founded in 1875 in New York by a Russian esotericist, Helena Blavatsky, and other people, Colonel Olcott, who was an American colonel. So it's pleasant to be back here. Okay, so a little bit of my introduction. Well, I was born in Montreal. I'm a Canadian-British citizen. I chose to live partly in Canada and then in Britain. I came back to Britain in the 80s and threw myself into the deep study of philosophical and esoteric traditions. Particularly, I was interested in, the whole esoteric history of this land. I got interested in the studies of Dr. John Dee. I used to come to the Theosophical Society library here and the Arcane School and the Anthroposophical Library and the London Library and the British Library. I spent 4 years studying. Then I did a degree at the University of London in history, and I studied contemporary European world history and going back to classical European intellectual history. And then I did a PhD in transpersonal history at the University of London. I taught at Birkbeck College in history of ideas. And then I studied the history of the Cold War, my PhD. It began as a study of the Cold War and the role of intellectuals in politics and conflict resolution. I was looking at the role of intellectuals in peacemaking in different fields. And I coined this idea of transpersonal history, which is a combination of Jungian ideas, the archetypal view of the functioning of the collective unconscious through history. History is not just a sequence of events. There's something. They're the images on the screen. Behind that, you have the whole backdrop in the unconscious of all of us, at the level of what Jung calls soul, or the heart. And what interests me as a psychologist of history is how these factors play out. And Brexit, the crisis over Brexit, is therefore very good for analysis from that transpersonal history perspective. That's where I'm coming from. I then set up a mediation service dealing with interfaith dispute resolution. I worked at the Gandhi Foundation in East London. And like Gandhi, I felt that war and violence are pretty much outmoded, and we should be able to draw on transpersonal spiritual wisdom to heal conflicts between different religious groups or different secular political agencies and so on. I set up this mediation service, which is still running. And I wrote up its work partly for my PhD. I launched an institute at the University of London dealing with peace studies and global philosophy, which is still running. It's now autonomous. It's not part of the University of London. And it's currently based in its headquarters in France. It's the only global institute that deals with peacemaking from a comparative philosophical perspective. One of the things I got involved with through that was mediating among the Druid communities, vis-a-vis sacred access to sites like Stonehenge and things, also Tara in Ireland, and I've travelled widely throughout the Druid community in Britain, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. I'll be coming back to that, which has given me a real sense of I know these islands like the back of my hands, all of them. I know the people at every level of society, from the poor, the kind of homeless, people that live in benders, right up to the kind of posh lords and ladies. I've mingled with them all, which gives me, I think, a unique perspective on Brexit debates. And I set up a thing called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland, just before the Good Friday Agreement. I lived when there were still bombs on the streets of London and Manchester and Belfast as a regular occurrence, and I was the more I got to know about Irish history and politics and met Irish Druids, I was shocked at how little the British are taught about Irish history. And that bit therefore informs one of my later sections in this talk. More recently, I've got involved with a thing called the World Intellectual Forum, which is the equivalent of the World Economic Forum, but it's a body of intellectuals, not just economists. And we're trying to come together throughout the world. It's launched in India in December, a couple of years ago. I'm the European coordinator of this. We're trying to create an intellectual forum where we can have debates and come together to heal planetary problems. And I also run the Global Green University because my interest in environmentalism is bigger picture solution to these problems is appropriate. Anyway, that's a brief introduction to where I'm coming from. I'm going to move on to the first section. Right, so